The sand burns through your skin like a slow fire. Around you, thousands of Roman soldiers lie scattered across the desert floor, their bodies bloating under a merciless eastern sun. Shields that once carried the eagle of Rome are now half buried in blood-soaked dirt. Every breath you take scrapes your throat raw with grit and the sour stench of decay. You try to cry out, but no sound comes. Your lips are cracked. Your tongue is swollen. None of that matters now. Your enemies are not here to give you mercy. They are heating a crucible over open flame. Inside it, liquid gold rolls and hisses like something alive. Rough hands seize your face. Fingers pry your jaw apart. The richest substance on earth is about to become the last thing you ever taste. This is not myth. This is not poetry. This is what actually happened to Marcus Licinius Crassus, the man history remembers as the wealthiest person in the entire Roman Republic. In the decades before the fall of the Republic, he moved through Rome like a shark through still water. He bankrolled Julius Caesar when no one else would. He cut deals with Pompey that made both men dangerous. He transformed every crisis, every riot, every collapse into a transaction. When the gladiator Spartacus nearly brought Rome to its knees, Crassus crushed the rebellion and then crucified 6,000 slaves along the Appian Way, just to make a point. He bought entire neighborhoods after fires. He acquired the properties of executed men at auction. He turned suffering into spreadsheets centuries before spreadsheets existed. But none of it filled the hole inside him. Wealth alone could not buy what he truly craved. Because while Pompey paraded through Rome, draped in the love of the people, and while Caesar was building an empire in Gaul that poets would sing about for millennia, Crassus was something far more painful than a failure. He was a footnote, the wallet, the silent partner, the man who funded greatness but never tasted it himself. That shame ate him alive. So he purchased a war no one asked for, marched 40,000 Roman soldiers into a wasteland they did not understand, and walked straight into one of the worst military disasters Rome had ever seen. If you stay until the very end, you will witness how a man who believed he could buy the world ended up choking on melted gold poured down his throat. Before we go any further, drop a comment telling me what city and country you are watching from right now. And if you have not subscribed yet, tap that button to support the channel. You are watching Ancestral, the greatest dark history channel on the planet. Rome is on fire. Flames tear through rooftops like hungry animals. Clay tiles shatter in the heat. Thick black smoke pours through narrow streets, swallowing everything. Families stumble out of doorways, clutching whatever they can carry. A woman screams for her children. An old man collapses against a wall, coughing blood. And then something shifts. The panic changes direction. People step aside. Because coming through the chaos, in perfect formation, is a column of trained slaves carrying ropes, axes, and leather buckets. Marcus Licinius Crassus arrives on foot. He does not rush. He does not sweat. His hands are folded behind his back like a man inspecting a garden. To the terrified homeowner watching his entire life turn to ash, this calm figure in expensive cloth looks like a gift from the gods. Crassus listens patiently while the man begs. The house is everything. 3 generations built it. The walls are cracking. The roof is minutes from caving in. Crassus glances at his men. They do not move. Not one hand reaches for a bucket. Then comes the proposition. He will order his crew to fight the fire, but only if the owner surrenders the property for a price so low it is an insult. If the man says no, Crassus simply watches it burn. If the man says yes, a snap of the fingers brings the brigade to life, hauling water, tearing down walls to create fire breaks, smothering flames with wet fabric. By morning, the owner is homeless. Crassus owns another block of the city. This was not a moment of opportunism. It was a system. Crassus built a private firefighting operation staffed with hundreds of enslaved men trained to respond like a military unit. Then he waited. In a city constructed from timber and packed so tightly that a single candle could ignite an entire neighborhood, he did not have to wait long. Every blaze was a transaction. He would arrive at the scene, survey the damage, and make his offer while the heat blistered the paint off nearby walls. If a property owner froze, unable to decide, Crassus would simply stand there, watching the fire spread closer, letting the seconds do his negotiating for him. How fast can a man think when his children are coughing smoke and the ceiling above them groans? Over years, this strategy gave him something no pile of coins could match: real estate. Crassus understood a truth about Rome that most men missed. Gold could be stolen, silver could be debased. But land in the right location was permanent power. He targeted properties near the Forum, along major roads, beside aqueducts, in neighborhoods that were expanding. He bought them wrecked, rebuilt them with slave labor that cost him almost nothing, and then leased or flipped them at enormous markups. He was a developer, a moneylender, and an extortionist rolled into one person. He made money when Rome prospered. He made even more money when Rome suffered. Eventually, people began to joke that the fires themselves answered to Crassus. But this ruthless empire of property did not begin with flames. It began with corpses. When Crassus was still a young man, Rome collapsed into civil war. Lucius Cornelius Sulla seized the city by force and introduced the proscriptions, public death lists posted in the heart of the Forum. Any Roman citizen whose name appeared on those lists became a legal target. Kill them, and the state would pay you. Their homes, their land, their fortunes were confiscated and sold off at public auction for prices that made a mockery of their real value. It was organized murder dressed up as law. Most people saw horror. Crassus saw inventory. He used every connection he had to find out which names were about to appear. He turned state-sponsored killing into a purchasing strategy. Mansions, country estates, farmland, entire city blocks seized from the condemned went up for sale, and Crassus was there every single time, bidding through intermediaries so no one could track how rapidly his portfolio was growing. Some ancient sources even claim he pressured Sulla to add specific wealthy men to the lists, just to get their assets onto the auction block. Whether every accusation is accurate or not, the trajectory is undeniable. Every time the Republic spilled blood, Crassus filled his coffers. Imagine the scene. A senator's townhouse, doors nailed shut, his body dumped in a gutter somewhere outside the walls. His family has vanished. Everything he spent a lifetime accumulating is spread across tables in a public square. Bidders shuffle nervously. Who wants to look rich during a political massacre? Crassus does not hesitate. He offers a fraction of the value, demands absurd terms, and relies on the terror in the air to keep anyone else from raising a hand. By the time Sulla steps away from power, Crassus is perched on top of a fortune built from blood and legal technicalities. He does not slow down. He pours money into silver mines, into the slave trade, into construction projects across the city. He becomes the silent investor behind dozens of enterprises, extending credit at punishing interest rates, then confiscating whatever borrowers put up as collateral when they inevitably default. His household overflows with skilled slaves, readers, builders, accountants, musicians, tutors. He trains performers and rents them out for aristocratic dinner parties. Every corner of Roman daily life, from burial ceremonies to theatrical productions, becomes another revenue stream. Crassus is not merely wealthy. He is an entire economy operating inside one man's household. Wealth of that magnitude does not stay quiet. It starts pulling political strings. Crassus begins backing ambitious young politicians, funding their campaigns, covering their debts, smoothing their paths. One of those young men is Gaius Julius Caesar, a brilliant and reckless aristocrat with a gift for public speaking and a habit of spending money he does not have. Caesar has buried himself in debt, throwing lavish public spectacles and running for office. Crassus writes the checks. He clears the loans, purchases the loyalty, and expects something far more valuable than repayment. He wants influence. When Caesar opens his mouth in the Senate or addresses a crowd, Crassus's agenda is woven into every sentence. But there is another force in Rome that Crassus cannot outbid. Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, Pompey the Great. Where Crassus conquered through ledgers, Pompey conquered through blood. By the time Crassus dominates the Roman property market, Pompey has already swept through North Africa, annihilated pirate fleets across the Mediterranean, and reorganized entire kingdoms in the East. He receives triumphs. He receives statues. He receives standing ovations in the theater. Crassus receives receipts. The contrast could not cut deeper. One man is the sword of Rome. The other is the man Rome borrows from when the sword gets expensive. Crassus finds his chance to rewrite that narrative in 73 BC. Rome is panicking. A Thracian gladiator named Spartacus, trained to die for the entertainment of his owners, leads a desperate escape from a gladiator school in Capua. What begins as a handful of fighters armed with stolen kitchen tools spirals into something the Republic has never faced: a slave army. They shatter every force Rome sends against them. They raid wealthy estates. They liberate other enslaved people. They humiliate consul after consul on the battlefield. For the Roman elite, this is not just a military problem. It is an existential nightmare. Their own human property is waging war against them. The Senate is running out of options. Every general they send comes back defeated or dead. Crassus steps forward with an offer no one else is making. He will personally finance the recruitment and training of fresh legions. He will lead them himself. This is not patriotism. This is a calculated bet. If he destroys Spartacus, Rome will have no choice but to celebrate him. He will finally own something his money alone could never purchase: a military reputation. When Crassus assumes command, he introduces a policy so extreme it shocks even the most hardened officers. Some of his soldiers had broken and fled in earlier engagements. He decides that cowardice will be punished with a ritual from Rome's darkest past: decimation. He separates the units that ran into groups of 10. Each group draws lots. The man who pulls the marked stone is forced to the ground. His own squad beats him to death with fists, stones, and wooden clubs, while officers watch in silence. There is no trial. There is no exception. The survivors stand over the broken bodies of men they trained with, ate with, slept beside. The lesson is absolute. Running from the enemy means nothing if Crassus is standing behind you. Under his leadership, terror does not only point outward, it cuts both ways. It achieves exactly what he wants. His legions become ferocious, not out of courage, but out of pure dread. Crassus drives Spartacus south, constructs enormous trench systems and fortified walls to pin the rebels in place, and slowly tightens the noose. Spartacus fights with everything he has, smashing through lines, attempting escapes by land and sea. But the net keeps closing. Finally, in 71 BC, the rebellion shatters on a blood-soaked Italian battlefield. How exactly Spartacus dies remains unknown, but the fate of his followers does not. Crassus wants Rome to see what defiance costs. Along the Appian Way, the ancient highway stretching from Capua to the gates of Rome, he orders 6,000 captured rebels nailed to crosses, one after another, spaced every few dozen paces, a corridor of agony that stretches for miles, bodies hanging in the sun, twisting against iron nails, skin splitting, eyes gone dark. None of them are taken down. They are left to decompose in public view. Every trader, every pilgrim, every senator riding in a litter passes through a gallery of slow death personally curated by Crassus. He expects Rome to worship him for this. He expects the full spectacle of a triumph, the golden chariot, the laurel crown, the roaring crowds. Instead, as his legions finish the cleanup, Pompey rides in from Spain. Pompey mops up a few scattered groups of fleeing slaves and sends word to the Senate claiming he delivered the final blow to a war others merely started. Rome gives Pompey the glory. Crassus receives an ovation, a lesser honor, a consolation prize. To a man who funded the entire campaign from his personal accounts, it feels like being handed a participation ribbon. Feel the weight of that. Crassus bled his treasury dry for this war. He rebuilt a broken army with his own gold. He engineered the siege works. He ordered the decimation. He crucified 6,000 men along the most traveled road in Italy. And the name on everyone's lips is still Pompey. Once again, military fame lands on someone else. Crassus is shoved back into the role he despises more than anything. The financier, the invisible hand, the man the Republic uses but refuses to admire. He is too calculating to lash out. Instead, the rivalry produces something no one expected. In 60 BC, 3 men who should be enemies agree to cooperate: Crassus, Pompey, and Caesar. The Senate is paralyzed by infighting. The Republic is choking on its own dysfunction. Each of the 3 men holds a piece of the puzzle the others need. Caesar needs the consulship and a prestigious military command to build his legacy. Pompey needs his veterans settled on land and his eastern political arrangements ratified. Crassus needs favorable tax contracts for his business network and greater leverage over economic policy. What emerges is an unofficial pact historians would later call the First Triumvirate. There is no public announcement, no ceremony, just a private understanding between 3 of the most dangerous men alive. Crassus floods Caesar's campaigns with cash, buys voting blocks outright, and greases every political mechanism in Rome. Caesar, once he holds the consulship, pushes through laws that reward Pompey's soldiers and enrich Crassus's tax collectors. Together, the 3 of them command so much combined wealth, military force, and popular support that the Senate bends around them like metal around a flame. For a time, it functions. They run Rome from the shadows. But the imbalance is there from the start. Pompey has already celebrated multiple triumphs. Audiences erupt when he enters the theater. Playwrights weave flattering references to him into their scripts. Caesar, once he secures his command in Gaul, begins flooding Rome with reports of astonishing victories. Conquered tribes, bridged rivers, captured fortresses. His dispatches pass from hand to hand in taverns. Soldiers compose marching songs about him. His reputation grows like a wildfire that no one can contain. And Crassus sits in Rome, surrounded by more money than either of them will ever see. And it means nothing. He hosts enormous public banquets. He funds construction across the city. He is constantly swarmed by people who owe him favors, who need his loans, who depend on his patronage. When he crosses the forum, men bow, but no one cheers. They know he is powerful. But in Rome, power without visible sacrifice, without standing in the front line with blood on your sword, is considered incomplete. He crushed Spartacus, yes, but that story is fading. Pompey's naval campaigns and Caesar's Gallic wars are the fresh legends circulating through the city. Picture him at a private dinner. Pompey leans back and describes a siege in the east. Every guest hangs on his words. Caesar, visiting Rome between campaigns, delivers a perfectly timed anecdote about outwitting a barbarian chief. The room explodes with laughter. Then someone, trying to be generous, turns to Crassus and says something like, "And let us not forget our dear friend, whose contributions to the treasury have been truly remarkable." It is like congratulating a gladiator's sponsor instead of the gladiator. Crassus smiles. The smile does not reach his eyes. Beneath the surface, something is rotting. He possesses more wealth than Pompey and Caesar combined. He saved the Republic from a slave revolt that could have unraveled civilization. He has shaped elections, rewritten tax codes, installed allies in every branch of government. Yet he knows, with a certainty that keeps him awake at night, that history will not carve his name beside theirs. In the Roman imagination, true greatness is forged on a battlefield, ankle-deep in the blood of foreign enemies, not in back rooms negotiating interest rates. Crassus, the richest man of his generation, wants the one thing his fortune cannot deliver: immortality. That hunger is about to destroy him. By the late 50s BC, the alliance is cracking. Julia, Caesar's daughter and Pompey's young wife, dies during childbirth, severing the personal bond that held the two men together. Political violence erupts in the streets of Rome. Armed gangs loyal to rival politicians attack each other openly. Senators split into hostile factions. The Triumvirate begins to unravel. Caesar is deep in Gaul, building both an army and a mythology. Pompey lingers in Italy, increasingly courted by the old aristocratic establishment. Crassus sees the walls closing in. If the partnership dissolves, he becomes nothing more than a moneylender caught between two warlords with legions at their backs. He needs a command of his own, a war of his own, a stage where he alone stands in the light, somewhere he can march at the head of an army, crush an enemy, and ride back into Rome wearing a laurel crown with captives stumbling in chains behind his chariot. And not some minor border skirmish. He wants a campaign on the scale of Alexander crossing into Persia. Something vast. Something legendary. His gaze drifts east, past the province of Syria, past the Euphrates, toward the ancient and powerful empire of Parthia. Before we follow him across that river, stop for a moment. If you are still here, you are not someone who clicks on history videos out of boredom. You are part of something rarer. The kind of person who actually wants to understand how ambition, wealth, and ego bent the ancient world into the shape we inherited. That is exactly why we built the Lineage, our channel membership. This is not a donation box. This is our inner circle. When you join, you are doing more than supporting the channel. You are becoming part of the team that keeps these investigations independent, deeply researched, and unflinching. Members get early access to new episodes and exclusive behind-the-scenes material. If this feels like your tribe, if you recognize yourself in this obsession with the truth behind power, hit the join button and step into the lineage. because now we follow Crassus into the decision that will end his life. In 55 BC, Crassus secures the governorship of Syria. On its own, this is already a prize. Syria is one of the wealthiest provinces in the Roman world. It sits at the crossroads of trade routes that stretch from Egypt to Central Asia. A cautious governor could spend a few comfortable years skimming taxes, collecting bribes, and return to Rome even richer than before. But Crassus has no interest in caution. From Syria, he can see the Parthian frontier, an empire sprawling across modern Iran and Iraq, ruled by a dynasty that has already embarrassed Roman commanders. The Parthians are formidable, but to a man consumed by the need to prove himself, they look less like a threat and more like an opportunity wrapped in silk and gold. He builds his justification piece by piece. He tells the Senate that Parthia is a growing danger. He argues that the eastern provinces need protection, that Roman allies along the border are vulnerable, that a show of force will stabilize the region. The arguments sound reasonable. They are also hollow. Underneath every strategic phrase is something far simpler: jealousy. Pompey owns the sea. Caesar owns Gaul. Crassus wants to own the East. If he can push deep into Parthian territory, capture their cities, maybe even reach the legendary treasures beyond the Tigris, he will finally be remembered as something more than a vault with legs. Opposition in Rome is fierce. The Senate has not authorized a war. Rome has existing treaties with Parthia. Experienced voices warn that the Eastern Empire fights differently, that the terrain is merciless, that supply lines will stretch to the breaking point. But the machinery of the Triumvirate can still overpower dissent. Through backroom deals, political pressure, and sheer financial muscle, Crassus gets his command approved. Objections are drowned out. He is marching east, whether the Republic consents or not. As he assembles his forces and prepares to cross into enemy territory, older Romans remember exactly who this man is: the profiteer of civil war, the landlord who grew fat on burning homes, the general who crucified 6,000 slaves along a highway. They also remember what happens when ambitious men take loyal armies far from Rome and come back with their own agendas. Sulla did it. Marius did it. Some of them whisper that giving Crassus legions and a free hand in the East is like handing a torch to a man standing in a warehouse full of oil. Crassus hears none of it. Or if he does not care. He sees only what he has wanted his entire life: a door standing wide open to the glory that has always been denied him. He stands at the edge of Syria, staring out toward the Parthian horizon, already imagining his return. Prisoners dragged through the streets, wagons overflowing with Eastern treasure. His name chanted louder than Pompey's, louder than Caesar's. He believes, with every fiber of his being, that his wealth can purchase anything: supplies, allies, guides, intelligence, even victory itself. He has no concept of what is waiting for him in that desert. He does not understand that his body will be left in foreign dust, that his legions will be slaughtered, and that enemy hands will force his jaw open and pour liquid gold down his throat as a final, mocking tribute to the man who loved money more than life. The wasteland is patient. The mounted archers are already in position. In what comes next, Crassus will lead 40,000 Roman soldiers into a landscape designed to kill them, dismiss every warning placed in his path, and collide with a Parthian commander whose name Rome will carry like a scar for generations: Surena of Parthia. The first thing that breaks is morale, not bodies. It starts with the weight. Shields that felt manageable in the training yards of Italy now pull at wrists and forearms like anchors. Chainmail that sat comfortably on shoulders during morning drills now grinds into collarbone and spine with every step. Syria was already brutal, but as the columns push east, away from the coastal breeze and deeper into the baked interior of Mesopotamia, the heat stops being weather and becomes a weapon. Crassus has filled their heads with visions of fast conquest, gleaming plunder, an Eastern empire stripped bare for Roman hands. Most of them believe it. They are legionaries of Rome. They have inherited the memory of Carthage broken, Macedon humbled, entire civilizations folded into the Republic. What army on earth could stop them? The desert answers with silence. The Parthians do not appear at the border with infantry columns and war banners. There is no dramatic confrontation, no enemy line to crash into. Instead, there is emptiness. A landscape so vast and so flat, it feels like marching across the surface of nothing. No cities worth looting. No fortified crossings where a proper battle can be forced. Just cracked earth, shimmering heat, hills that dissolve the closer you get, and the unshakable feeling that unseen eyes are tracking every step. Around 54 BC, Crassus leads roughly 40,000 men across the Parthian frontier. Legionaries, cavalry, auxiliary units. He carries the numbers. He carries the discipline. He carries the full institutional weight of Rome behind him. He also carries a long list of warnings from people who know this land better than he does. He ignores every single one. The most urgent warning comes from Artavasdes, king of Armenia. Artavasdes does not merely advise caution. He offers Crassus a concrete alternative. Tens of thousands of Armenian troops. A protected route through the highland passes of his kingdom. In the mountains, Parthian horsemen lose their greatest advantage. Roman infantry can anchor itself in narrow valleys, control choke points, force the kind of grinding close-quarters engagement where legions are virtually unbeatable. The Armenian king practically begs Crassus to take the highland road. Stay out of the open plains. That flat land belongs to the Parthians. It is their killing ground. Crassus hears every word and walks the other way. The mountain route is too slow, too grueling. His soldiers will freeze in high passes and crawl through bottlenecks. The army will move like a wounded animal instead of a striking fist. Crassus wants velocity. He wants his formations stretched wide across open ground, supply wagons rolling without obstruction, the full spectacle of Roman power on display. He also wants something the mountains cannot offer: wealth. The lowlands of Mesopotamia hold cities, temples, markets, and trade depots. There is gold down there. There are prizes worth seizing. He chooses the flatland. From that moment forward, every day is borrowed time. Inside the Roman camp, doubt spreads like infection. Gaius Cassius Longinus, a sharp officer who will one day be remembered for an entirely different act of violence, serves as one of Crassus's senior commanders. Cassius has studied the Parthians. He understands that they are not disorganized tribal raiders. Their cavalry operates with precision. Their archers can destroy formations from distances Roman javelins cannot reach. He urges Crassus to stay near rivers, avoid exposed terrain, and never allow the army to be caught in open ground, without natural cover. Crassus treats the advice like an insult. He has spent his entire life being told what he cannot do. He is not about to start listening now. Then a new figure enters the story, a local chieftain named Ariamnes. He presents himself as a friend of Rome. He offers to guide the legions along a direct route straight to where the main Parthian army is supposedly camped. No mountain detours, no wasted weeks. A clean line to the enemy. Officers like Cassius smell deception immediately. The offer is too convenient, too perfectly shaped to what Crassus wants to hear. But Crassus does not see a trap. He sees confirmation. Someone is finally telling him what he already believes. He follows the guide without hesitation. What comes next is not the triumphant eastward march Crassus has been narrating inside his own head. The sun beats down on iron helmets until the metal is too hot to touch with bare skin. The ground radiates heat upward into their faces like an open furnace. Dust churned up by 40,000 pairs of boots and thousands of hooves fills lungs and coats eyes until men stumble half-blind. Water becomes the only thought that matters. Every creek they cross seems thinner than the one before. Some dry up entirely as they approach. Soldiers begin collapsing under the weight of their own equipment. Dysentery moves through the ranks. The local guide keeps pushing them further from the river systems, deeper into terrain that offers nothing but exposure. Rumors ripple through the marching columns. Some men whisper that the Parthians are too frightened to fight. Others mutter that a massive enemy force is assembling somewhere just beyond the horizon. Crassus rides up and down the line, repeating the same promise. Contact is coming. The great battle is close. Victory and plunder are just ahead. But as the days grind on, all they encounter are phantom dust clouds in the distance and scouts who return with nothing but confusion. Eventually, Cassius and a group of senior officers force a confrontation with their commander. They lay out the case plainly. Ariamnes is a plant. The route is designed to strand them in open ground far from any defensible position. They are being herded. Crassus waves them off until a new report shatters through his composure. Scouts ride in hard with confirmation that a Parthian army is nearby and moving with purpose. Before Crassus can process the implications, Ariamnes vanishes. No farewell, no excuse. The guide is simply gone one morning, as if the desert swallowed him. The meaning is impossible to miss. They have been walked into a killing field and left there. Crassus convenes a war council near the town of Carrhae. The year is approximately 53 BC. Intelligence reports estimate the approaching Parthian force at somewhere between 10 and 12,000. Crassus commands nearly 4 times that number. Several officers push hard for a defensive strategy. Fall back to Carrhae. Use the town's walls and water supply as an anchor. Force the Parthians to attack fortified positions where Roman discipline can grind them down. Cassius argues this case with intensity. Something about the emptiness surrounding them feels deliberately engineered. But Crassus is imprisoned by his own ego. Withdrawing now, before he has even faced the enemy, will confirm everything his critics have always said. That he is a banker playing soldier. That he flinches where Pompey and Caesar charge forward. That his only real courage is financial. He tells his officers that the Parthians are bluffing, that their reputation is inflated, that no mounted force on earth can break a properly formed Roman battle line in open ground. He orders the army to march out from Carrhae and meet the Parthians in the field. On the morning of battle, the Roman army assembles under a white, punishing sky. Crassus deploys his forces in a deep, compressed formation resembling a hollow rectangle. Legions packed tight on every side. Cavalry stationed on the flanks. Skirmishers and light infantry scattered along the perimeter. The idea is to create a formation so dense and so protected on all sides that no cavalry charge can penetrate it. In concept, it sounds logical. In reality, it builds a box that cannot move fast enough to catch an enemy that refuses to stand still. Across the open plain, dust begins to climb. At first, it is barely visible, a pale smudge low against the horizon. Then it thickens, expands. The Romans hear a sound they cannot place, not the rhythmic crash of infantry boots. Something looser, a rolling, uneven growl that seems to come from the earth itself. When the shapes finally resolve out of the haze, they are nothing like what any Roman in the formation has trained to fight. There are no columns of foot soldiers, no shield walls, no battle lines. There is an ocean of horsemen. The Parthian army materializes across the plain in fluid, shifting waves, thousands of riders moving with an ease that makes the ground beneath them seem cooperative. Up close, the Romans can distinguish two types. The majority are lightly equipped horse archers carrying compact composite bows and deep quivers bristling with arrows. The rest are something else entirely. Cataphracts, heavy cavalry encased from skull to shin in layered metal plate, mounted on horses draped in their own armor, carrying lances long enough to impale a man from beyond sword reach. They look less like soldiers and more like iron monuments that learn to move. At the center of this force rides the man who designed everything the Romans are about to experience. Surena, the Parthian commander. Young, wealthy beyond what most Roman senators could imagine. His armor catches the light with inlays of gold and silver. His horse wears a jeweled bridle. Drummers and standard-bearers surround him. He understands something critical about this battle before it begins. His army is alien to Roman eyes. He does not try to make it familiar. He amplifies the strangeness. He wants the legionaries staring across that plain to feel not just outnumbered in skill, but confronted by something they do not have a framework to understand. Before a single weapon is raised, the Parthians attack Roman nerves. Drums begin pounding in a deep, ceaseless rhythm that vibrates through the ground and into the bones of men standing in formation. War cries roll across the flat terrain. But the riders do not charge. They hover at the edge of javelin range, circling, shifting, always moving, never committing to close combat. The Romans stand locked in position, drenched in sweat, gripping weapons designed for an enemy who will not come within reach. Then the sky goes dark. The first volley does not trickle in. It crashes down like a squall, thousands of arrows launched in coordinated waves from composite bows, engineered to deliver force that Roman equipment was never built to absorb. Layers of horn and sinew bonded to curved wood snap forward, with a violence that sends shafts screaming across the distance. The arrows climb in long, arching trajectories, then plunge downward into the packed Roman formation. Shields jerk upward. Wood cracks. Iron rings. Men in the front ranks stagger as impacts hammer into their defenses. But the true horror reveals itself within minutes. The Parthian archers do not stand still and trade volleys like civilized opponents. They ride in sweeping loops around the Roman box, firing from every angle, constantly repositioning. Some gallop in close, release a burst of arrows, and wheel away before a single javelin can answer. Others perform the maneuver that will haunt Roman military memory for centuries. As their horse turns to retreat, the rider twists backward in the saddle, draws his bow to full tension, and fires with devastating accuracy at the men foolish enough to give chase. The Parthian shot, a technique that transforms retreat into attack and turns every Roman pursuit into a death sentence. The legionaries try to answer with javelins. The range is wrong. Every time a unit surges forward to close the gap, the Parthian riders simply drift backward. maintaining the same lethal distance as if connected by an invisible cord. Arrows find every weakness in the Roman formation. A soldier raises his visor to clear the sweat burning his eyes. An arrow buries itself in his face. Another shifts his shield for half a second to adjust his grip. A shaft drives between his ribs. There is no crashing melee, no enemy throat to seize, just death raining from a sky that offers no cover. Crassus commands the testudo. Shields lock together overhead and along the flanks, forming the famous tortoise shell. Under this canopy of wood and iron, the arrow storm clatters and deflects. For a few moments, it feels like safety. But the formation cannot move. The instant the shell cracks open so men can march or breathe, Parthian archers adjust and send arrows pouring through the gaps. The testudo is not a tactic. It is a cage. Time turns against Rome with mathematical cruelty. The Parthians have prepared for exactly this kind of prolonged engagement. Behind their firing lines, trains of camels carry bundles of fresh arrows. When an archer empties his quiver, he peels away from the fight, rides to a resupply camel, refills, and returns to the line in minutes. The ammunition is functionally infinite. The Romans possess a fixed number of javelins. Once those are thrown, they have nothing that can reach the enemy at range. They are fighting a battle of attrition they cannot win. Beneath the shield canopy, the world compresses into a suffocating nightmare. Bodies press against bodies. Sweat pours down faces into eyes already stinging with dust. Arrows punch through overhead gaps at random, and every impact triggers a flinch that ripples through the formation like a shockwave. Wounded men groan or scream depending on what they can still control. Officers march between the ranks barking orders, insisting that patience will outlast the arrows, that eventually the Parthians must close to sword range. The Parthians have no intention of closing. As hours crawl past, the Roman army begins to grasp the shape of its own destruction. This is not a battle. It is a systematic disassembly. They are being opened up one wound at a time, bled slowly under a sky they cannot fight. Crassus rides along his lines shouting confidence he no longer feels. His face is rigid. His voice is strained. Nothing in his experience has prepared him for an engagement where the enemy refuses to engage. There is no point in the Parthian formation to aim a decisive charge at. If he opens the box to send his full force rushing forward, the formation dissolves, and the horsemen carve into it from every direction. He is paralyzed by a form of warfare he did not know existed. Fury mixes with terror inside the Roman square. These are soldiers trained to close with an enemy and destroy him at arm's length. Standing motionless while arrows cut them apart violates every instinct they possess. Centurions shout upward at the command group demanding action. Anything, any order that involves moving forward instead of dying in place. If they can just reach the archers, Roman steel will do the rest. The problem is the gap between where they stand and where the enemy rides. It might as well be an ocean. Surena watches from a position of complete control. His strategy does not require a brilliant, decisive blow. It requires patience, constant pressure applied to a structure that looks solid but is slowly crumbling from within. He knows that if he maintains the barrage long enough, some section of the Roman formation will fracture. When it does, he will be ready. After what feels like an eternity of punishment, Crassus spots what looks like an opening. The Parthian fire seems to concentrate on one sector of his formation, the wing commanded by his son, Publius. Publius leads the auxiliary cavalry, Gallic horsemen, and lighter mobile units. He is young, aggressive, and burning with the need to prove himself. He has fought under Caesar in Gaul, trading blows with screaming tribal warriors at close quarters. Watching his men bleed under arrows they cannot answer is destroying him. He rides to his father through the chaos. "Give me the cavalry," he says. "Let me break their screen." He gestures toward a section of the Parthian line where the archers seem to have drifted closer, grown more reckless. "I can scatter them. One hard charge, and this changes." Crassus hesitates. He understands the danger of splitting his forces, but he also understands that the army cannot survive this bleeding indefinitely. If Publius can shatter the archer screen on one flank, maybe the entire dynamic shifts. Maybe the Parthians lose their rhythm, and the battle collapses into the close-range brawl where Rome is supreme. He looks at his son. He looks at the arrows still falling. He looks at the officers waiting for a decision that might save them or finish them. He gives the order. Publius turns his horse and rides back to his men. Trumpets cut through the noise of the barrage. For the first time in hours, something other than endurance is happening. Publius assembles his strike force. Thousands of Gallic cavalry and light infantry form up alongside him. Dust rises as horses stamp and jostle into position. Across the formation, legionaries lift their eyes above their shields to watch. Hope stirs in men who had started to believe they would die standing in place. The Parthians opposite Publius appear to waver. Some pull back. Others fire erratically, as if startled by the gathering Roman charge. Their line looks thinner, less disciplined, almost fragile. Surena is not startled. He is performing. Before we follow Publius out across that open ground, this is the right moment to tell you about something we built for people who want to go deeper than a single video. The book that served as the foundation for this entire episode, the source that mapped every decision, every mile, every catastrophic miscalculation at Carrhae, is available right now through the View Products button on your screen. This is not some generic history survey. It is a relentless, meticulously researched record of Rome's Eastern catastrophe. The kind of book that makes you feel the heat and the dust and the terror on every page. If this story has its hooks in you, that book belongs on your shelf, and the shop holds more than one title. When you open it, you will find a curated collection of artifacts, rare editions, and dark history objects we have selected specifically to match this world. No previews, no spoilers. The discovery is part of the experience. You will also find our official channel reading list, Essential Dark History Books You Should Own, a hand-picked library designed to arm you with the deepest knowledge available on the subjects we cover. Tap View Products, open the shelf, and browse while we continue. You can build your collection and follow the story at the same time. Out on the desert floor, Publius drops his lance into attack position. He gives the command and his cavalry explodes forward. Hooves pound the cracked earth. Gallic riders howl battle cries learned on the green fields of Europe, desperate to finally close with the tormentors who have bled them for hours. Dust erupts behind the charge in a towering wall. The men still locked inside the Roman square watch them go, knuckles white on shield grips, silently willing them to succeed. If Publius breaks through, this ordeal might end. The Parthian archers ahead of Publius do exactly what a retreating force would do. They turn, they ride away. They scatter arrows over their shoulders as they go, but their formation loosens. Gaps open. They look disordered, rattled, on the verge of breaking apart. Publius leans forward in his saddle and drives his men harder, faster. Close the distance. Do not let them regroup. Every stride takes him further from the Roman square. The main body of the army shrinks behind him, a dark rectangle dissolving into dust and distance. The drumming and the screams of the barrage fade. Ahead, the fleeing Parthians keep just beyond reach, pulling him forward like a current pulling a swimmer away from shore. Then the landscape changes. On a low ridge ahead, shapes begin to materialize. Heavier, slower, denser. These are not the nimble archers he has been chasing. These are cataphracts. Hundreds of them. Fully armored riders on armored horses, lances couched, arranged in a formation that is not retreating. It is waiting. Publius does not yet understand what is happening, but the desert understands perfectly. He is no longer the hunter. He is the offering. He has ridden straight into a pocket designed with surgical precision, and his name was written into its design before the first arrow ever flew. Publius does not recognize the jaws closing around him until they snap shut. His cavalry is thundering across open ground, finally moving forward after hours of standing still and absorbing punishment. The Parthian horse archers ahead keep looking back, loosing arrows, then pulling away just fast enough to stay beyond sword reach. It feels like a chase. It feels like progress. His Gallic riders scream and brandish their weapons, starving for the close-quarters violence they were trained to deliver. Dust fills their mouths. Behind them, the main Roman formation contracts into a distant smudge of metal and misery. Then the ground shifts. A gentle rise in the terrain, barely noticeable, stretches across the horizon like a crease in the earth. On its far side, invisible until the final seconds, an armored wall stands motionless. Cataphracts. The Parthian heavy cavalry in full battle dress. Men sealed inside plated armor on horses, wrapped in their own iron skin. Lances leveled. Silent. Waiting like a door about to slam. Publius has one breath to decide. Turn back. And he confirms every doubt anyone ever whispered about his family. That the Crassi are merchants, not warriors. That their courage is only as deep as their coin purse. Charge forward, and he bets everything on punching through before the archers circling behind him seal the exit. His pride makes the choice for him. He screams for a full assault. Horns blast. The ground shakes. His horsemen hurl themselves toward the iron line. The Parthians do not flinch. As Publius closes the distance, the cataphracts begin rolling forward. Not retreating. Accelerating. Behind him, and along both flanks, the horse archers sweep inward, curling around his force like fingers closing into a fist. Arrows begin falling again, but this time they target the horses as much as the riders. Animals shriek and buckle. Men are launched from saddles into the dirt. The charge staggers, but does not stop. Then the two forces collide. The cataphract impact is not a battle. It is demolition. Publius's front wave disintegrates on contact. Lances built for this exact moment drive through shields as if they are paper, through breastplates, through the bodies behind them. Horses slam together at full speed, bones snapping on impact, riders crushed beneath rolling animals. In the wreckage, Gallic cavalrymen try to use their agility, slashing at joints in the Parthian armor, stabbing upward at any exposed gap. Their blades bounce off layered plate like sticks against stone. The cataphracts are not soldiers in the traditional sense. They are armored machines built for a single function: destruction at close range. And they execute that function with mechanical precision. Around the edges of the melee, the archers continue their work. Arrows pour into the tangled mass of struggling men and thrashing horses from every direction. There is no angle of retreat that is not covered. Romans who try to break free are ridden down. Those who push deeper into the fight are skewered on lances. The battlefield becomes a grinding pit of blood-soaked sand, shattered equipment, and bodies piling on top of bodies. Publius fights in the center of the carnage. His shield is cracked nearly in half. His sword arm is going numb from impacts. An arrow punches through his forearm. Another buries itself in his thigh. He keeps swinging, but the men around him are disappearing faster than his mind can process. Every direction he turns reveals another gap where a comrade used to be, now filled with an armored Parthian rider. He fought tribal warriors in Gaul. He stood in shield walls against screaming barbarian charges. None of it prepared him for this. A trap engineered with the precision of architecture, where individual bravery is not a factor in the equation. Within minutes, his strike force ceases to be a fighting unit. It becomes a shrinking island of survivors, hemmed in on every side. The Parthians squeeze the perimeter tighter but refuse to rush. There is no need. Every attempted breakout produces more corpses. Horses trip over the fallen. Panic spreads through whatever remains of the allied cavalry like fire through dry timber. Some men try to flee alone and are hunted down one by one, run through from behind. Publius sees the mathematics clearly now. There is no way out. He is bleeding from multiple wounds. His vision is blurring from heat and blood loss. Roman sources record that when his surviving companions beg him to attempt one final charge, he refuses. He will not be captured. He will not be dragged through enemy camps as a trophy. He will not give the Parthians the satisfaction of parading the son of Crassus in chains. He makes the decision that Roman aristocrats had made before when the situation was beyond rescue. He chooses to die on his own terms. He asks one of his closest companions to drive a blade through him rather than let him be taken alive. Some accounts say he guided the sword himself. However the final seconds unfold, the outcome is the same. Julius Crassus dies on a low ridge in the Mesopotamian desert. Thousands of miles from the city, his father spent a lifetime purchasing piece by piece. The Parthians sweep through the wreckage. They strip the dead, gather prisoners, and collect their prizes. Among the trophies, they find what they are looking for. Publius's head is severed, cleaned, and mounted on the tip of a spear. They ride back toward the Roman square. Hours have dragged past at the main formation. Crassus and his legions have heard the distant sounds of battle. Metal striking metal. The muffled roar of massed cavalry. Screaming that could belong to men or horses or both. But the dust is too thick to see clearly. They stand under the relentless arrow barrage, waiting for a sign. A messenger. A returning rider. A trumpet call signaling victory. Nothing comes. And then something does. The Parthian army drifts closer. The archers resume full-intensity fire on the Roman box. Then, ahead of the main Parthian line, a small detachment of riders approaches at a deliberate walk. They are not shooting. One of them is carrying something mounted on a long spear. When they come close enough for Roman eyes to identify the object, the formation does not groan. It does not shout. For a moment, it simply stops breathing. It is the head of Publius. Ancient sources describe the Parthians calling out to Crassus, mocking him, telling him that his son showed more courage than his father ever could, that Crassus should abandon any pretense of being a commander and simply grieve like a parent, because that is all he is now. Whether those precise words were spoken or invented by later writers hardly matters. The effect on the Roman army is real and visible. Men who held their ground for hours under a storm of arrows feel something fundamental collapse inside their chests. Crassus is destroyed. The man who crucified 6,000 human beings along the most famous highway in the ancient world now stands paralyzed, staring at his own son's face mounted on enemy steel. His officers close around him, not to protect him from the Parthians, but to prevent the army from seeing its commander shatter. They know that if despair becomes a stampede on this open ground, every man in the formation will die before sunset. They force the ranks closed, shields up, hold position, survive until dark. Darkness arrives the way it always does in the desert. Suddenly, the Parthians, content with the devastation they have inflicted, withdraw just far enough to rest their horses and rotate their men. They have killed or maimed thousands of Romans. They have annihilated the only mobile strike force Crassus possessed. They can afford to be patient. Tomorrow will finish what today started. Inside the Roman perimeter, the night is poison. Wounded soldiers lie on bare ground without meaningful medical care. Men with arrows still embedded in their bodies try not to move because every shift sends fresh waves of agony through torn muscle. Officers gather in clusters and argue in harsh whispers about what to do. Cassius and others make the case with desperate urgency. Staying here means annihilation. Their only chance is to move under cover of darkness toward Carrhae and shelter behind its walls before the sun returns. Crassus has ceased to function as a commander. Grief and shock have fused into a paralysis that no amount of shouting can break. Some accounts claim he wanted to stay and hoped the Parthians would offer terms. Others say he agreed to retreat, but failed to issue coherent orders. In the resulting chaos, different units receive different instructions. Some slip away silently into the Black Desert. Others remain in place, unaware that the army around them is dissolving. The legendary Roman discipline, the machine that conquered half the known world, crumbles into disconnected clusters of frightened men stumbling through darkness. Cassius manages to pull a portion of the force together and leads them on a grueling march back toward Syria. He survives, but Crassus, with a large section of the remaining legions, wanders lost in the dark. The desert does not care about net worth. It does not respect political connections. It swallows his advantages and amplifies every error. By the time the sun rises again, it is 53 BC, and Crassus is still deep in hostile territory. His men are dehydrated, exhausted, half-organized at best. They have reached hilly ground, but remain dangerously exposed. The Parthians, refreshed and resupplied, close in for the final act. Surena can see the Roman army is one push away from total disintegration. He could finish them with another day of arrows and cavalry sweeps. But he chooses something crueler. He sends riders forward under a flag of truce. Messengers approach the Roman lines with an offer. Negotiate. Come and talk. Perhaps some arrangement can spare what remains of the army. Perhaps Crassus can take his survivors and withdraw. Crassus does not believe a word of it. Every instinct tells him this is a trap. But his soldiers are at the edge of what human beings can endure. They are terrified of facing another day in the open against an enemy they cannot touch. Murmurs of surrender ripple through the ranks. Some men openly threaten to mutiny if Crassus refuses to parley. The general who once executed his own troops to enforce obedience now finds himself coerced by the survivors of his catastrophe. He agrees to go. Crassus and a small escort of officers ride out into the space between the two armies to meet Surena's delegation. The groups face each other in the empty terrain. What happens in the next few minutes is told differently by every ancient writer who recorded it. But every version arrives at the same destination. Crassus dies in that space between the lines. In most accounts, Surena insists that the terms must be formalized on horseback, and that Crassus must ride with them. The Romans grow suspicious. Hands reach for weapons. Someone seizes a bridle. Someone else grabs an arm. Steel flashes. In the eruption of violence that follows, Crassus is cut down. Whether a Parthian blade finds him or he falls in the general chaos is a detail history cannot resolve. His body hits the dust of Mesopotamia and does not rise. The wealthiest man in the Roman Republic dies far from his vaults, far from his properties, far from the forum where men used to bow when he passed. He does not die leading a heroic last stand. He does not die in a glorious cavalry charge. He dies in a failed negotiation, surrounded by enemies who viewed him with contempt from the moment he crossed their border. What follows transforms the death into legend. Roman and Greek historians record that the Parthians severed Crassus's head, and in several versions, his right hand as well. Multiple ancient sources describe Surena ordering molten gold poured into the severed head or into his open mouth. A final, savage commentary on the life of a man who measured everything in metal. The words attributed to the Parthians vary by source, but the message is always the same. Here is the gold you spent your life chasing. Now swallow it. Whether the molten gold episode occurred exactly as described or was embellished in later retellings is something modern scholars continue to debate. But its survival in the historical record matters more than its literal accuracy. Roman writers preserved the image because it felt true. It crystallized something they understood about Crassus at a level deeper than fact. The man who tried to purchase glory drowned in the symbol of his own obsession. His body is left in the desert. His head travels east as a diplomatic trophy. Orodes the Depoind, the Parthian king, receives it during a celebration of his own. He is feasting alongside Artavasdes of Armenia, the very monarch who had pleaded with Crassus to take the safe highland route. The two kings are watching a performance of Greek theater. The play being staged is the Bacchae by Euripides, a tragedy in which King Pentheus is ripped apart by his own mother in a frenzy, and his severed head is carried back as a grim prize. In a coincidence so grotesque that multiple ancient historians recorded it independently, Crassus's head arrives during the performance. Someone makes a decision that collapses the boundary between drama and reality. Instead of using a stage prop, the actor lifts the actual severed head of Marcus Licinius Crassus into the light. The audience erupts in laughter and applause. The man who once decorated a highway with 6,000 crucified bodies as a performance of Roman power is now reduced to a prop in someone else's theater. His death is not mourned. It is entertainment. Back in the desert, the Roman army exists only in fragments. Approximately 20,000 soldiers are killed or die from wounds sustained in the battle and its aftermath. Another 10,000 are taken prisoner. These captives are marched deep into Parthian territory, resettled as laborers and garrison troops along distant frontiers, far from anything they would recognize as home. Some later traditions claim groups of Roman prisoners were pushed as far as the borders of Central Asia and forced to serve as mercenaries for foreign rulers. The verifiable truth is stark enough without embellishment. Tens of thousands of Roman lives were fed into the desert because one man could not tolerate being remembered as merely rich. The military reputation of Rome suffers a wound that takes decades to heal. Legions have been defeated before, but never like this. Never by an Eastern power using tactics that turned Rome's greatest strengths into vulnerabilities. The loss of the legionary eagles, the sacred battle standards captured by Surena, becomes an open sore in the Roman national psyche. Recovering those eagles transforms into a political obsession that will consume the attention of leaders for a generation. The political consequences are equally devastating. Crassus's death detonates the already fragile structure of the first triumvirate. With the third pillar removed, there is nothing left to balance the growing hostility between Pompey and Caesar. The financier, for all his ruthlessness, had served as a counterweight, a buffer, a reason for both men to negotiate instead of fight. Now that weight is gone. In the years that follow, the tension between the two surviving giants ignites into full-scale civil war. The Republic, already fracturing along a dozen fault lines, accelerates toward collapse. Carrhae is not the sole cause, but it is one of the cracks that brings the ceiling down. His properties survive him. His fortune passes to his heirs. His fire brigade operation, his rental empire, his network of debts and political favors, all of it persists in the fabric of Roman economic life. But his personal mission, the one ambition that drove him into the desert, fails absolutely. He wanted to convert wealth into the kind of fame that outlives stone. He wanted his name spoken alongside Pompey and Caesar, not as their banker, but as their equal. Instead, when later generations speak of Marcus Licinius Crassus, they do not speak of a great commander. They speak of the man who believed money could purchase what only blood and sacrifice could earn, and who paid for that delusion with the lives of 40,000 men who trusted him. This is where the ancient world reaches through the centuries and grabs you by the collar. Because Crassus is not a relic sealed behind museum glass. He is a pattern. He built a machine that converted catastrophe into capital and suffering into spreadsheets. He believed that sufficient wealth granted the right to control governments, rewrite laws, and manufacture wars on demand. For a time, he was correct. But when he stepped out of the world of transactions and into a world where money could not deflect an arrow, or negotiate with dehydration, or bribe the sun into mercy, every assumption he held disintegrated around him. He tried to buy the single thing Roman civilization valued above all else, a warrior's immortality. Instead, he purchased a death march into a landscape that punished every weakness he had spent a lifetime concealing. And whether or not liquid gold actually seared his throat in his final moments, he died with his greed as the only story anyone would ever tell about him. That leaves a question that spans from 53 BC to this afternoon. We still inhabit a world where a handful of individuals can purchase political influence, reshape legislation, and extract profit from the disasters of ordinary people. Vanity projects of staggering scale still get launched, not because humanity needs them, but because someone with an obscene surplus of wealth needs to feel significant. So ask yourself, when you look at the wealthiest figures alive today, the ones who treat nations like chess pieces and populations like resources to be managed, whose face comes to mind? Whose story do you think history will eventually tell the way we just told this one? Not with molten gold, perhaps, but with a fall so total and so public that people will repeat it for centuries as proof that wealth without wisdom is just a longer road to ruin. Tell me in the comments whose hubris you believe will be judged the harshest. If you are still here at this moment, you are not a casual viewer. You are the reason this channel exists. Subscribe if you have not already. Like this video. Send it to someone who still confuses net worth with intelligence. This story is the rebuttal. On your screen right now, another documentary from Ancestral is waiting for you. It was chosen specifically to continue the thread we just pulled. More power, more blood, more consequences. Click it. If you have come this far, the next episode is not optional. It is the next step down into the depths of what humanity has done in the name of ambition. You have just watched another premium documentary by Ancestral, your ultimate history destination on YouTube.